They say power announces itself. They're wrong. Real power waits and watches. If you had passed me that morning, you would have seen nothing worth remembering. A man in worn shoes, standing in his driveway, watering tomatoes like time had nowhere else to go. "Mr. Hancock," my neighbor called from across the fence, "you ever gonna fix that old car?" I glanced at the faded pickup with the cracked mirror. "Still gets me home," I said. He laughed. That was the point, because while he saw a quiet, aging man, 5,700 employees were waiting on decisions I had already made before sunrise. Hancock Hall Corporation didn't need a face. It had me. Invisible. Untouchable. The first time I met Elliot Butler, I knew two things instantly. My daughter Annie was already falling in love, and this man had never truly lost anything. He shook my hand firmly. "Sir, I've heard a lot about you." I studied his grip. Confident, practiced. "Have you?" I asked. Annie squeezed his arm, smiling too brightly. "Dad, don't interrogate him on day one." I smiled back, but inside, I already was. That night, after they left, I sat alone in the dark kitchen. Annie's laughter still lingered in the walls, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened a private file. Elliot Butler. Background checks, financial patterns, employment history, behavioral flags. If you think that's extreme, then you've never built something worth protecting. Or someone. 3 weeks later, my assistant's voice came through the secure line. "Everything's clean, Mr. Hancock. Unusually clean." I leaned back slowly. "Or carefully managed," I replied. There was a pause. "Do you want me to dig deeper?" I looked at Annie's photo on the shelf. Her smile, the same one her mother had the last day I saw her alive. "Yes," I said quietly. "Dig until it hurts." What I found didn't destroy Elliot. It complicated him. He wasn't perfect, but he was good. Dangerously good. The kind of man who could either protect my daughter or ruin her without meaning to. So I made a decision that would change everything. Not just his life, mine too. I picked up the phone. "Begin executive search protocol," I said. "For what position?" my assistant asked. I watched the sun rise over a company no one knew was mine. "CEO," I answered. A pause. Then carefully, "Do you have a candidate in mind?" I smiled. I already met him. Some invitations don't arrive. They close around you. Elliot called at 7:42 p.m. Too precise to be casual. "Harry," he said, warm as always, "my parents are in town. They want to meet you. Properly." I didn't answer right away, because in my world, properly usually means prepared. "For dinner?" I asked. "Yes, tomorrow. Aldridge." Aldridge. White tablecloths. No prices on the menu. Conversations that cost more than the food. My grip tightened on the phone. "Have they met Annie?" I asked. "Yes, but this is different." A pause. "Barely there, but real." "How so?" "They've been asking about you." There it was. A thread pulled too early. After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I found myself staring at Annie's childhood drawing still taped inside a cabinet door, a crooked house, a stick figure holding a larger hand. "Don't let anything bad happen to me, Daddy." She'd said that once, half asleep, half afraid. I had made a promise, and I don't break promises. I picked up the secure phone. "Run Butler family background," I said. A pause on the other end. "Level?" I didn't hesitate. "Everything." The report came in at 2:13 a.m. Magnus Butler. Old business ties. One name highlighted in red. Hendricks Hall. My chest went cold. A ghost. No, worse. A story that had never stayed buried. The next evening, Elliot met me outside Aldridge, flawless in a tailored suit. "You made it," he said, relieved. "I always do," I replied. He hesitated, then smiled. "You'll like them." I looked past him, through the glass to a table already set. 3 chairs filled, 1 empty, waiting. "No," I said quietly. "I think they'll like me." And that was the moment I knew this wasn't dinner. It was a move, and someone somewhere believed I was already out of moves. They were wrong. The waiter pulled out my chair. I sat down slowly, deliberately, like a man stepping onto a stage he already understood. "Harry, this is my father, Magnus, and my mother, Felicity," Elliot said, his voice just a shade too careful. Magnus smiled. "Too wide, too ready." "Finally," he said, gripping my hand with both of his. "We've been looking forward to this." People don't look forward to meeting you like that, unless they rehearsed it. We exchanged pleasantries, ordered food, waited, because that's what this was. Waiting, not dinner, not family, a setup. I watched Elliot closely. He spoke when spoken to, laughed when expected. But his eyes, they avoided mine, just slightly, just enough. That does a man do when he realizes he's sitting at a table he doesn't fully understand. 40 minutes passed. Then Magnus adjusted his cufflinks. A small gesture, a signal, and everything in me went still. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a cream-colored envelope, placed it in front of me, carefully, like it mattered, like it would change something. "Harry," he said quietly, "there are things about your past that need to be addressed." Elliot didn't look up. Felicity held her breath, and I stared at the envelope, at the weight of it, at the name I already knew was waiting inside. I rested my fingers on the paper, felt the edge. Cold, familiar. Some names don't stay buried. They wait for the right moment to return. Then I opened it, and just like that, the past walked back into the room. Some lies don't scream. They survive quietly, passed down like inheritance. I opened the envelope. Slowly. Not because I was afraid, but because I already knew the name waiting inside. Hendricks Hall. For a second, the restaurant disappeared. And I was back in 1995. We were young, broke, reckless enough to believe hard work could outrun reality. Hendricks and I built everything together: contracts, clients, sleepless nights fueled by cheap coffee and impossible dreams. He used to clap me on the shoulder and say, "Harry, one day we'll laugh about this." I almost smiled at the memory. Almost. Then came the numbers. Small inconsistencies at first. A missing transfer, a delayed payment. "Accounting error," he told me once, waving it off. "You worry too much." I wanted to believe him. That was my mistake. 6 months later, I found the truth. Not in one place, but everywhere. Money siphoned, clients redirected, a second company rising quietly in the shadows, built from my work. I remember the night it broke me. I sat alone in the office, staring at the files, and whispered, "Why, Hendricks? Why?" There was no answer. Just silence. I trusted him, I said quietly, looking up at Magnus. "You destroyed him," Magnus shot back, voice tight with anger. "No," I replied, steady. I stopped him. I gave Hendricks a choice. No courts, no headlines. "Walk away," I told him, "or I take everything to the authorities." He stared at me for a long time, then nodded and vanished. Magnus leaned forward, eyes burning. "He died with nothing, because of you?" And there it was. The version he'd been fed. The version he believed. I closed the envelope gently. "Then you never knew your brother," I said. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This wasn't about truth. It was about a story someone had chosen to believe. And tonight, I was about to tear it apart. Truth doesn't explode. It arrives quietly and leaves nothing standing. I placed my envelope on the table. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just paper. But I've learned something over the years. Paper destroys more lives than weapons ever will. "Before you continue," I said calmly, sliding it toward Magnus, "you should see the rest of the story." He didn't touch it. That told me everything. "Open it," I added. Felicity reached first. Of course she did, hands trembling just enough to betray her. Bank records, transfers, shell accounts, dates, signatures, truth. This is fabricated, Magnus snapped, too quickly. No, I said softly. It's documented. I leaned forward. Your brother didn't lose everything. He moved it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to lose. Silence. Heavy, crushing. And then I turned to Elliot. Tell me, I said, holding his gaze, what do you know about how you became CEO? He straightened automatically. I was recruited, interviewed, chosen. Yes, I nodded. You were. A beat. And every one of those steps led back to me. His brow furrowed. I didn't look away. I owned Hancock Hall Corporation. It was subtle. The moment it hit him. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a fracture. Like glass cracking beneath pressure. You're what? He whispered. The man you've been reporting to, I said, for 19 months. Magnus sat down hard. Felicity covered her mouth. But Elliot. Elliot didn't move. Because his world wasn't collapsing in noise. It was collapsing in understanding. Why? He asked. That question. Not anger, not accusation. Just pain. Because I needed to know who you were, I said quietly. Not as a CEO, not as a name on paper, but as the man my daughter chose. And then he turned to his father. How long? He asked. Magnus hesitated. Too long. And in that silence, everything broke. A man is revealed in many ways, but never more clearly than in the moment he must choose. Elliot didn't raise his voice. That's how I knew it mattered. You knew, he said to Magnus, each word precise. You knew who he was, and you used me anyway. Magnus reached for control. I was protecting this family. No, Elliot cut in. You were settling a lie. Silence snapped tight across the table. Felicity whispered, Elliot, please. But he shook his head. No more. Then he turned to me. And for the first time that night, he stood on his own. I'm sorry, he said. I felt something was wrong, and I stayed quiet. That honesty? It hits harder than perfection ever could. I held his gaze. 7 months ago, I said, you rebuilt our Midwest chain, saved us $7.2 million. His brow furrowed. You knew? I know everything that matters. A beat. You still have your position Monday. Relief flickered, but didn't take over. Good. He'd earned that control. Magnus exhaled, defeated. Let's go. They left without looking back. Without the envelope. Without the past they thought would win. The waiter appeared, uncertain. Dessert? Elliot let out a breath, half laugh, half disbelief. Yeah, he said. Let's finish this. Later, my phone buzzed. I told Annie everything. She says she loves you, and your glasses are embarrassing. I smiled. Those glasses built her future, I typed. Because in the end, he didn't choose power. He chose truth. And that is the only thing I've ever trusted. Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.